West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
It was my experience that Mr. Trump inflated his total assets when it served his purposes, such as trying to be listed amongst the wealthiest people in Forbes, and deflated his assets to reduce his real estate taxes.
Thanks to former Trump fixer Michael Cohen's testimony in 2019, New York Attorney General Tish James started looking into Donald Trump's finances. And now she's planning to depose Trump, calling him in to answer questions under oath on January 7th. James is investigating whether Trump committed fraud by improperly inflating the value of his assets on annual financial statements in order to secure loans and obtain economic and tax benefits. They're looking into several properties where Trump reported different valuations to banks and tax authorities. Por ejemplo, the Trump Organization owns an office building at 40 Wall Street in Manhattan. In 2012, when the company was listing its assets for potential lenders, it said the building was worth $527 million, which would make it among the most valuable in New York. But just a few months later, the Trump Organization told property tax officials that the entire 70-story building was worth less than a high-end Manhattan condo, just $16.7 million. According to newly released city records, that was less than 1/30th of the amount it had claimed the year before. That property is now under scrutiny from the Manhattan District Attorney and New York Attorney General, along with several others like it, for which the Trump Organization gave vastly different value estimates. According to public records and people familiar with the investigations who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss ongoing inquiries. As the Washington Post notes, appraisers have said it is highly unusual for a company to provide such widely different valuations of the same properties at the same time. Trump's lawyer responded today saying, quote, Mr. Trump is right when he says this is a witch hunt. We are not concerned about it because he has done nothing wrong. I'm joined now by Tim O'Brien, senior columnist at Bloomberg Opinion, and Tristan Snell, former Assistant Attorney General of New York and managing partner of Main Street Law. Mr. Snell, I'm going to point you to the tweet that you put up earlier today. You said if the New York AG wants to depose Trump, it's because they've already assembled their case. Trump's testimony would just be the icing. You don't go after the CEO until you've already gotten all the other evidence. This case is 90% built. Does that mean you believe that Donald Trump will be indicted? Oh, okay. We're having some issues with Mr. Snell's audio, so we're going to come back to him. I'm going to go to you, Tim O'Brien, to set aside whether or not we believe that there will actually be an indictment. A lot of people doubt Trump will ever face accountability. But if he shows up for this deposition, you've dealt with him in a deposition before. How do you expect him to behave?
Well, Donald Trump's biggest problem, Joy, is that he is a flagrant and unhinged liar. And that is a lawyer's worst case scenario, to put someone under oath who isn't capable of actually telling the truth. This is a very targeted deposition. When we deposed Donald Trump, we had lots and lots of issues to discuss with him over lots and lots of years. We looked at the valuation of all of his properties. We had his tax returns. We looked at his dealings with his insurers. We looked at what he got for speaking fees when he went out on the road. Tish James's office is focused, I think, primarily on 3 properties: 7 Springs in Westchester, 40 Wall Street, and his hotel in Chicago. And on this issue of whether or not he inflated the values when he wanted a loan and deflated the values when he wanted to lower his tax bill. I do think this signals that she's very near the end of her investigation. I do not think she'd seek to depose him unless they felt they were fully armored up with all of the evidence they needed to put on the table across from him. It's going to be interesting to see how he responds to documentary evidence that's contradicts what he or people in his organization have said in the past. That's what my lawyers did when we deposed him and we stripped the bark off of him like an old tree. We caught him in, I think, more than 30 different lies during 2 days of depositions in late 2007. The other thing to remember, is that her investigation is linked to Cy Vance's investigation. They have been collaborating throughout, and Vance's investigation, I think, is broader and has longer legs than Tish James. So I think you can see these as part of the same effort.
Yeah, and Mr. Snell, we've got you back. So if they are now trying to depose the CEO, depose Donald Trump, does that indicate to you that someone below him has given him up and given up documents and information?
I think yes, but really the documents are really the key thing for the civil case, because at the end of the day, the civil case does not need to show intent. So it's less about testimony and more about the documents, and the documents are plain as day. The thing you showed earlier, Joy, really just hits the nail right on the head. That is a 3,300% disparity between what they reported to a lender and what they reported to the tax authorities. These numbers really speak for themselves. Donald Trump didn't need anybody to snitch on him. He snitched on himself with how broad of a disparity that was.
And please explain to us the difference in what would be, if Donald Trump were to lose this civil case and Letitia James were to win it, what would be the penalties for that versus a criminal case?
So the reason why everybody's been sleeping on this case and not really giving it that much attention is because people who want to see Donald Trump be brought to justice, they want to see him go to prison. This is a civil case. He's not going to go to prison. No one will, for this matter. However, this could take an economic wrecking ball to the Trump organization. This could mean hundreds of millions of dollars in back taxes, penalties, other fees that he could have to pay to the state as well as to the lenders that he defrauded. So this could be ruinous for him financially.
And could he then face the criminal case if Cy Vance's case is connected?
Exactly. He's going to face it with a 1-2 punch. He's going to have the civil case and the criminal case going. We didn't realize until today how far along the civil case is. This is really far along. We wouldn't bring in somebody for this kind of testimony, like we were just saying, 90% plus if this case is already built. So this is really far along. He's going to get it. Trump's going to get it from both directions on this one.
And Tim, I've always sort of somewhat suspected that because of the sort of vagaries of the sort of daintiness of the Department of Justice and these OLC memos that say, oh, don't touch a former president, that Donald Trump is more likely to go down like Al Capone on his taxes, on the money stuff, and that's the stuff he's facing. He's facing a bunch of other civil lawsuits. He's facing a bunch of other criminal inquiries. But in the end, is it going to be his lies when it comes to his money that are going to be his biggest danger?
As long as they can tie him to those lies and tie him to what they are assessing are criminal acts, they are going to have to show intent in the criminal case. And Donald Trump is not a sophisticated man. He's an ignoramus in many ways, but he is a survivor, and he has this reptilian ability to evade the law by surrounding himself with other people he throws under the bus when push comes to shove. And undoubtedly, he will blame this on accountants. Undoubtedly, he'll blame this on other people in his own organization. So there's going to be a really high bar, I think, for Cy Vance's office to say they know he did it and he knew he was doing something wrong.
Yeah, he'll find a patsy, and he always seems to find some that are willing to do it. It's really strange. Tim O'Brien, thank you very much. Tristan Snell, thank you very much.
It is Friday, the 10th of December of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, we've made it to Friday, which means that we have the weekend ahead of us. What will transpire? We can only guess. You know, a couple of things are at the top of my mind as we get going here. One is this PowerPoint demonstration that Mark Meadows had outlining the insurrection. You know about that, right? Because if you don't, it's because it's not being reported. God. But they had no problem getting, and they still do, they're getting on Kamala's case for buying a paella pan and wearing corded earbuds. That was on the news cycle 24/7 for a while. Couldn't get enough of it. And yet, here is damning evidence of a conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States of America, and it warrants not a, well, whimper? Yep. But they're going to keep dragging Kamala for that paella pan and continue to quote Politico for, well, the scoop. So that's one thing that's at the top of my mind, and it kind of angers me. And then the other one, actually, is Brian Williams retiring, so to speak, from 30-plus years, almost 30 years at MSNBC, MSNBC, and then he was with ABC before that. And so, you know, I mean, that's long enough to sort of become part of the family now, isn't it? Now, I know a lot of people are not really fond of Brian Williams. Excuse me. But I thought he was quite witty. And you juxtapose when he first started coming up, when they were grooming him for, you know, the reader job, you know, the anchor. And then I actually think, was this before or after? I think that he went to MSNBC because he was on the parent company, NBC, when it was divulged that he had exaggerated some of his, was it Vietnam? That he was in a helicopter or whatnot, and kind of exaggerated that story, and took the hit for it, by the way. And that's when I sort of, I really think that that's when he stopped being groomed for the head anchor position for NBC, and that was when he went to MSNBC. At the beginning, 96. So I don't know. Is that right? Was that around the time that story was exposed and he was taken to task? Could have been a little bit later. But regardless, 30 some odd years of the media spotlight, you tend to sort of, know a guy. And he's off to do other things. And I'm just curious on what that might be. He's around our age. Now you know that we all are of a certain age, aren't we? Yes, we are. So I don't feel like it's over yet. Though I certainly would not be able to stand 12 to 14 hours at a stove anymore, pumping it out. I guess I could for a day, and then I would need days to recuperate. Jeez, what the heck happened? Oh, I'll tell you what happened. It's called decay. DK. All right. Well, those were the two things that were at the forefront. And then some other news items came across the transom here just a little bit. It looks like we're going to extradite Assange back to the States to face espionage charges. And I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on that. But on the other hand, Assange has not been one to have, how shall we say, endeared himself. There's a reason why the people at the organization, was that WikiLeaks? Yes. The majority of them left because old Julian was, shall we say, a hard taskmaster. Plus, I don't know, is he becoming a Glenn Greenwald? You never know. Maybe not. But that's a curious development. I'll be curious to see how that goes. It would be nice, I'll tell you, it'd be nice if we put the same sort of effort in getting Assange that we do in getting the insurgents at the upper echelon. And you know who I'm talking about, Donnie and friends. If they paid attention to those and put the amount of effort in that as they do in the Julian Assange issue. It is all national security, after all, isn't it? I think it is. What else? Let's see. The indictments that are coming down are belying something obviously much bigger. And, Trump can't help himself, can he? Apparently, he's just fibbing by doing whatever what he does all the time. And what is that? Well, lowball the valuation of your property to the feds and inflate the valuation to the bank that you want to give money to you. Now, I have to say that was the way real estate worked for a long time, and then they put the kibosh on it around the Clinton era. And I know a lot of people were upset about it because I was there. Oh, no. I remember people scrambling like, oh, God, I got these 2 sets of books. Now I got to put them into one. What do I do? Well, you shouldn't have done it in the first place, huh? Told you that was not the way to do it. And what was the excuse for doing it? Well, everybody does. Oh, really? So if everybody's doing something illegal, it makes it less illegal? Come on. So, I had some acquaintances that scramble because they were carrying 2 books, one for their taxes and one for the bank. And they thought that was a good business model. And this guy's just carried that practice on for decades. I don't know, maybe it's different in New York, but out in California, the West Coast, you can't do that. So, by dint of the fact that the guy has pretty much undermined his own defense by the mere practice of how he does business, which is not hard to find out, by the way. So, but apparently he still wields tremendous power over the Republican Party and others, and I know why. Because he got some Russian help, and one of his business strategies, not the whole business strategy, but one of those, is getting dirt on people and blackmailing them until they come to heel. He said it in public, he said it in his books, through his ghostwriters in his books. But if somebody has wronged him, he hits them 10 times or more harder. And if he doesn't do that, he feels like he's weak. Oh, I have to hit him 10 times harder or else I'm weak. Well, you're already weak, buddy. So he exacts revenge on people over slights that he considers an affront to the loyalty he expects. If you're not loyal enough, you will be destroyed along with your family. And I think the Vindman brothers are an example of that. When you think of how the one Flynn brother is still in the military. And I think that they're pretty much surmising he was on the call to delay the military, or at least the National Guard response. And I actually think there were some federal troops across the river, too, ready to go. He still has a job in the government. But the Vindman brothers, Alexander testifies under oath, truthfully testifies. He and his brother, who did not testify, by the way, who was not subpoenaed, by the way, who was not even part of what Alexander was doing, by the way. They were both drummed out of the military Pension be damned. But Mike Flynn's brother, still working. Still doing what he needs to do to further the insurrection. They're all QAnon freaks. So yeah, there's a big double standard. Mark Meadows presents a PowerPoint on how to overthrow the government of the United States. Kamala Harris buys a paella pan and wears corded earbuds. What is the bigger affront to representative democracy according to the media? Well, corporate media. Yeah, the pan and the earbuds. It's enough to make one really, really mad, and I am. I'm so mad now I need to be centered, and how do we center ourselves here? Well, we have a curated show. And we might as well let you know what's part of this curated show today. Here at the end of the week, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Well, yes, the New York's Attorney General seeking Trump's deposition signals her investigation is coming to an end. On the rest of the menu, an anti-vaccine group has stalked and attempted to intimidate California's medical director at her home and her kids' school. Yeah. Georgia Republicans have purged black Democrats from county election boards across the state. Just don't say it's racist. And a Texas district judge ruled citizen enforcement of the nation's toughest abortion law is unconstitutional. Well, we'll see how long that lasts. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a statement by the Tunisian presidency said the current constitution is no longer valid. Well, now that's executive power. And a prominent Saudi Arabian women's rights activist accused 3 former U.S. intelligence contractors of an illegal phone hack that led to her arrest and torture. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. If you will then look across the page to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, right there to the left is our Patreon link. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford to send us the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, that really helps us pay our bills and continue this resistance against the hostile takeover of the United States of America. We're the poison pill to stop that. And it's your generosity that has allowed us to do this for almost 11 years now. Yeah, after the first of the year, well, as we get towards February. So, I'm a little early, but I'm happy because we take this as our civic duty and we take this quite seriously. And your generosity has helped us pay those bills and helped us and continues to help us replace the needed machinery that we need and the upgrades and purchases of the software to keep this powerhouse of resistance resisting. And we thank you for that generosity, and we need more of it. Not necessarily from you who have already been so generous, but we would be nice to have a few more. I know it's tough, but we do take this quite seriously. And when I say we, I'm not talking about West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I'm talking about Netroots Radio. Okay? Your contributions, your patronage helps the station. And this vehicle here is pretty much just to advertise the station. Whereas the station is really for the content out there, like Blue Gal and Drift Class and Mike Malloy and Nicole Sandler and Brad and Desi and etc. Randy Rhodes. Let's not forget Randy Rhodes. And we have Sea Change Radio. A science block on Thursdays. We do that. It have been for quite a while. So, yes, your generosity helps the whole station, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing that, because, like I said, we take this quite seriously. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio, and Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I'll tell you why. Because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter under Justice Putnam, because I'm in a hurry, okay? And the show notes and links are quite important to the whole production of this West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Salon. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Still don't know what we're doing with Spreaker. Yeah, the account or the level that we could probably afford only allows us 500 hours in the archive. And that gets used up pretty quick when you've got a 5-day-a-week podcast. And then others in the network have their hours. And it can fill up pretty quick. But I suppose what we'll have to do, if we keep Spreaker in some format, is take those archive shows and archive them. And I've been moving things over to the Wayback Machine over there at the Internet Archive. And so that's where we'll probably keep the bulk of all these years of shows across the Netroots Radio Network. Indeed. Okay, we'll figure that one out. Let's tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It's out of the Associated Press by Olga R. Rodriguez. The president of California's medical board, which issues medical licenses and disciplines doctors, says a group of anti-vaccine activists stalked her at home and followed her to her office, where 4 men confronted her in a dark parking garage in what she described as a terrifying experience. Christina Lawson, a former mayor of Walnut Creek, who was appointed to the board by former Governor Jerry Brown, said in a social media post on Wednesday she grew concerned on Monday after she noticed the people in a white SUV parked near her home and saw someone flying a drone over her house. They watched my daughter drive herself to school and watched me walk out of my house, get in my car, and take my 2 kids to school. The white SUV then followed her to work and parked head-to-head with her car in a parking garage. Lawson said that when she left the office building and entered the parking garage later that evening, 4 men jumped out of the SUV with cameras and recording equipment and confronted her. Lawson contacted Walnut Creek police, who later told her the men told officers they wanted to interview her. Instead, they ambushed me in a dark parking garage when they suspected I would be alone, she wrote on social media. She said the people identified themselves as representing America's frontline doctors and had not contacted the state medical board or her workplace to request to speak with her. Led by Simone Gold, a Beverly Hills doctor who was arrested during the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, America's Frontline Doctors criticizes the COVID-19 vaccine and has been widely discredited for spreading disinformation about the coronavirus and unproven treatments, like horse paste, magic dirt. I was concerned when I saw someone flying a drone over my house and saw a mysterious white truck parked outside my home, Later that day, my concern turned to terror, she said in a statement. Lawson added, I arrived in the dark parking garage behind my office and experienced 4 men unexpectedly rush towards me, jumping out of the same white truck that had been parked outside my house. I then realized that these 4 men had been surreptitiously stalking me. Lawson said she decided to go public with what happened to her to shed light on these reprehensible, unacceptable tactics of intimidation. But like other Californians who believe in fair play and science, I will not be intimidated, she said. Walnut Creek spokeswoman Lieutenant Holly Connor said in a statement that a man claiming to be a state detective from Georgia called a police dispatcher on Monday and said he was conducting surveillance in San Miguel, an unincorporated area near Walnut Creek. The dispatcher asked the man, whose name was not made public, if he had a weapon, and the man responded that his gun was locked in a case, Connor said. The dispatcher told the man that he should contact Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office, which oversees the area he said he was in. The Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office did not return email and phone messages seeking comment. Connors said the same man called the Walnut Creek Police Department again later in the day to let them know he was in a parking lot in Walnut Creek with at least 1 other person. The police department determined that the man who called earlier in the day, claiming to be a detective from Georgia, was likely involved in the incident with Lawson. And Connors wrote, adding that police have no evidence of a crime, but that investigators are still gathering information. Bill Prasifka, Medical Board of California's executive director, said he supports Lawson in condemning any attempts to intimidate her or any other member of the board and staff. Board members and staff have been advised to remain vigilant to their surroundings and provided security reminders. Oliphant and Nathan Lane bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Protesters filled the meeting room of a Spalding County Board of Elections in October, upset that the board had disallowed early voting on Sundays for the November 2 municipal election. A year ago, Sunday voting had been instrumental in boosting turnout of black voters. But this was an entirely different 5-member board that had overseen the last election. The Democratic majority of 3 black women was gone. So was the black election supervisor. Now, a faction of 3 white Republicans controlled the board, thanks to a bill passed by the Republican-led Georgia legislature earlier this year. The Spalding Board's new chairman had endorsed former President Donald Trump's false stolen election claims on social media. The panel in Spalding, a rural patch south of Atlanta, is one of 6 county boards that Republicans have quietly reorganized in recent months through similar county-specific state legislation. The changes expanded the party's power over choosing members of local election boards ahead of the crucial midterm congressional elections in November of 2022. The unusual rash of restructuring follows the state's passage of Senate Bill 202, which restricted ballot access statewide and allowed the Republican-controlled state election board to assume control of county boards it deems underperforming. In other words, they're black. The board immediately launched a performance review of the Democratic-leaning Fulton County Board, which oversees part of Atlanta and is the largest, as we all know, Democratic stronghold in Georgia. The Georgia restructurings are part of a national Republican effort to expand control over election administration in the wake of Trump's false voter fraud claims. Republican-led states such as Florida, Texas, and Arizona have enacted new curbs on voter access this year. Backers of Trump's false stolen election claims are running campaigns for Secretary of State, the top election official in battleground states, and some Republicans in Wisconsin are seeking to eliminate the state's bipartisan election commission and threatening its members with prosecution. The night of the long knives continues. The stakes are high in Georgia, which last year backed a Democrat for president for the first time since 1992. Its first-term Democratic Senator Ralph Warnock will be up for re-election in 2022, a contest that could prove pivotal to which party controls Congress. The governor's race next year pits incumbent Republican Kemp against Trump-endorsed candidate Perdue in a primary. The winner will likely face Democratic Senator Stacey Abrams, a voting rights advocate. Both Warnock and Abrams are black. The county board restructurings and statewide voting restrictions, Democrats and voting rights groups say represent the most sweeping changes in decades to Georgia's electoral system. Until 2013, Georgia elections operated under federal oversight to ensure fair participation for black voters in this once segregated southern state. But we all know what happened. Roberts said, "You elected a black guy. There's no more racism in America, so no more protections for you." Final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of Reuters by Tim Reed. I should add that I did pick this article up late last night, and we do have an update. It looks like the Supreme Court will allow the challenge to the Texas 6-week abortion ban, and apparently the Supreme Court is leaving the law in place, though this judge in Texas says it is unconstitutional. A judge in Texas ruled yesterday that a law prohibiting abortions after about 6 weeks violated the state's constitution because it allows private citizens to sue abortion providers. State District Court Judge David Peoples was ruling on a contentious Texas law that bans abortions after a fetal heartbeat has been detected, and there's no such thing, of course, usually about 6 weeks and when many women do not realize they are pregnant. It's not a heart. It's not a heartbeat. It's not a fetal heartbeat. All right. Abortion providers signal that despite the ruling, they are unlikely to resume the procedure until an expected ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court, which I just mentioned. The law, which went into effect in September, effectively bans nearly all abortions in Texas, America's second most populous state. And that's what I mean that the Supreme Court is leaving the law in place. Texas Right to Life, an anti-abortion group that backed the law, immediately filed an appeal against Thursday's ruling. The law was designed to avoid normal means of legal challenge because rather than making state officials responsible for enforcement, it instead gave private individuals anywhere the right to sue doctors and others who provide abortions about 6 weeks in Texas. Peoples ruled that the law is unconstitutional gave legal standing to people not injured and was an unlawful delegation of enforcement power to a private person. The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments about the Texas law last month and is expected to issue a ruling in coming weeks. The nation's highest court this month also heard arguments about a restrictive Republican-backed Mississippi law that is seen as a direct challenge to the court's landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling that legalized the procedure nationwide. In oral arguments on December 1st, conservative justices who have a 6-3 majority on the court signaled a willingness to dramatically curtail abortion rights in the United States. A ruling on the Mississippi law is expected by the summer. And we are waiting with bated breath. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Beyond the Label. F. Scott Fitzgerald once said, "The rich really are different from you and me." But in House of Gucci, director Ridley Scott challenges that and seems to say that while they may have more money, the rich still struggle with similar issues, especially family. Based on true events, this one tells the real-life drama of Maurizio Gucci, a scion of the family famous for their namesake brand of luxury goods, and his untimely death at the hands of his ex-wife Patrizia, who took a hit out on him after he left her for another woman. Since the case was highly publicized, we already know the who. Scott is looking at the why, at the slow turning, as it were. He accomplishes this, though at times the movie can feel soap opera-ish. The cast saves it from falling into camp, especially Lady Gaga, who plays Patrizia as a woman who really liked nice things, but nonetheless, at least initially, seemed to really love her husband, played by Adam Driver, and to be of help to him and his business. Scott skillfully navigates the class issue implicit in the story, the snobbery and disdain that the Guccis feel for Patrizia's nouveau riche background, leaving it to say all about the Gucci's social anxiety. The chemistry between Gaga and Driver's characters work, with solid support from Jeremy Irons, Al Pacino, and an over-the-top Jared Leto as the black sheep of the family, and who's responsible for some of the movie's funniest moments. Add the amazing wardrobe of 80s designer clothes straight from the Gucci archives, and House of Gucci is a fun look at how the 1% lives. Those of us who will never be in the perimeter of that world can take comfort in the adage, money can't buy happiness, but it does make for an interesting story. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. If you've ever looked up at the Milky Way, you've seen what's known as cosmic dust.
When you see this band, right, of the Milky Way, you can see these dark patches. And so that's really just dust that is obscuring the stars behind it.
Pascal Huche is an associate professor at the University of Geneva. He points out that cosmic dust isn't exactly the kind of dust you or I might be familiar with.
Cosmic dust is not quite the same as the dust we know, maybe from the apartment here. But it's cosmic dust are really just very small particles in the universe that are consisting maybe of just a few molecules, often containing carbon or silicate.
And as in that Milky Way example, the cosmic dust absorbs the light of stars behind it, making it harder for us to see those stars with instruments like the Hubble Space Telescope. But there is one way around that. Astronomers can observe the sky with longer wavelengths, using telescopes like the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array in Chile, or ALMA. With ALMA, astronomers can see even the dust bunnies hiding up in the sky, because as the dust absorbs photons from the stars behind it, it heats up.
And so then with ALMA, we can directly see the emission of this heated up dust even in the very early universe.
Ush and his team have now stumbled upon two previously obscured galaxies using ALMA observations. The galaxies date back to the very earliest days of the universe, 13 billion years ago.
So those are the first building blocks, right, of the galaxies that we see around us in the universe today. So these are the first kind of Lego stones. And apparently we have been missing some of those Lego stones.
In fact, the scientists estimate that up to 1 in 5 galaxies may be missing from our current census of the early universe. The results appeared recently in the journal Nature. Hubble's successor, the James Webb Space Telescope, is set to sail off the planet later this month, and with its more powerful ability to probe long wavelengths, Ush is hoping it might bring our galactic census a little closer to completion. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Can a high school punish a student for criticizing the school on Snapchat? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. At a high school in Pennsylvania, a ninth grader, identified in the recent Supreme Court decision as BL, didn't make the varsity cheerleading squad, and in the words of the court, did not accept that decision with good grace. More specifically, BL posted to her Snapchat friends group an image of herself and a friend giving a middle finger salute with the caption, "F*** school, f*** softball, f*** cheer, f*** everything." The image was brought to the attention of the school authorities, who punished her, suspending her from the JV cheerleading squad for a year. The student apologized, but to no avail. The punishment stood until the student sued in federal district court and won at the Court of Appeals, and at the end of June won her freedom of speech case at the Supreme Court as well. The High Court ruled that the school's interest in teaching good manners did not overcome the student's interest in free expression, emphasizing that the speech caused minimal disruption to teaching, learning, and school activities, and that the school has an important interest in protecting a student's unpopular expression, especially when the expression takes place off campus. The 8-1 majority opinion, written by Justice Breyer, intentionally does not answer all the questions of when off-campus speech might not be protected, but made clear that in this instance, it clearly was a good and clear victory for freedom of speech. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
You are listening to 60-Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The word parliament comes from the French word parler, or to speak. This points to the origins of the British Parliament as a body that would advise the king and later approve his proposals. Parliament gained greater importance under Henry III and his son Edward. Edward summoned Parliament frequently, on 46 occasions during his 35-year reign, often to approve more taxes. As happened with Edward's father, each time he asked for more revenue from taxes, he had to consent to more of Parliament's reforms. In 1295, Edward summoned what came to be known as the Model Parliament, because it formed a model for nearly all future parliaments. Nobles and clergy formed one House of Parliament, which would later become the House of Lords. The other House of Parliament was formed by 2 representatives from each county, known as knights, and 2 from each town or city, known as burgesses. Soon, Parliament would officially be composed of 3 parts: the monarch, the House of Lords, and the House of Commons. This principle would later become so important that the influential English jurist William Blackstone would write in the 18th century, "If ever it should happen that the independence of any one of the 3 should be lost, or that it should become subservient to the views of either of the other 2, there would soon be an end to our Constitution." That's all for today's podcast, 60-Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1915. That was the day the 1 millionth Model T rolled off the Ford assembly line in Highland Park, Michigan, near Detroit. Henry Ford started Model T production 7 years earlier. For nearly 20 years, the Tin Lizzie served as the first affordable vehicle, opening up travel and leisure to a new middle class. Ford refashioned the packing house conveyor to develop the assembly line. Before production moved to the sprawling modern River Rouge complex, the Highland Park plant was considered the factory that changed the world. Ford's ambition to produce cars for the multitudes extended to his workers. As part of his campaign to beat back organizing drives by the industrial workers of the world, Ford instituted the $5 day at the Highland Park plant. For auto workers, buying a Model T even with the $5 day was not so easy. The $5 day actually amounted to $2.34 in wages and an additional $2.66 a day in profit sharing if Ford determined the worker was actually living right. Investigators from his sociological department visited workers in their homes. The routine intrusions into the personal lives of workers away from the job included determining spending and cleanliness habits, whether they drank or smoked, whether they were married or single, the state of the workers' marital relations, and family values. Workers who failed these home inspections were given 6 months to shape up or be fired. Ford ruled young single men, women, and blacks completely ineligible from the wage program. For a time, employee turnover plummeted and production increased. But wartime inflation and deteriorating working conditions all but killed the $5 day, which ended in 1921.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting temperatures of nearly the same as yesterday, around 43 or 44 degrees, considerable cloudiness through the day, winds light and variable, and a small chance of rain during the day, but considerable cloudiness overnight, with occasional rain showers around midnight. Winds will be light and variable, lows in the mid-30s. And that should bring about 1/10 of an inch of rain. But then tomorrow, Saturday, highs around 43, periods of rain, winds out of the south-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and rainfall will be nearly half an inch. And we'll be getting about that or more. Actually, on Sunday, it looks like we're going to bump over an inch. And then Monday, Tuesday, there's a forecast of snow with the rain. So we'll see how that goes. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County. Now, I'm going to have to check this out because I think that the reporting has slowed somewhat, because I know for a fact that we continue to have infections, but the reporting by the county is not up to date. So at this moment, the county says we are standing at 251,005 people confirmed infected with coronavirus, and deceased remains at 363. But those numbers have not changed for a few days, and that's the first time during the pandemic that that's been the case. But as I said, I know for a fact that the hospitals are still getting new infections. Interesting. Pollen is rated as none right outside the window in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 41 parts per million, and that daytime UV index remains low at level 1. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.28 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 45 and partly cloudy. Paris is 45 and partly cloudy. Rome is 46 and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 44 and cloudy. Kabul is 37 and clear. Hong Kong is 65 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 44 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 43 degrees and sunny. And New York, New York is 45 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Anonymous staff at Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Tunisian presidency said yesterday, Thursday, the political problem in Tunisia today stemmed from the current 2014 constitution, which was no longer valid. The way forward is to return to the people in a completely new and different way. There must be a legal solution based on the will and sovereignty of the people, the statement said, quoting President Kais Saied.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Joel Scheckman and Christopher Bing of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Saudi Arabian women's rights activist accused 3 former U.S. intelligence contractors of an illegal hack of her phone that was instrumental in her being arrested and later tortured in her home country, according to a lawsuit filed in a U.S. court. Lojane Al-Hatul helped lead a campaign to allow Saudi Arabian women to drive by live streaming herself, violating the ban which was lifted in 2018. She spent almost 3 years in Saudi jails and is currently banned from leaving the kingdom. The lawsuit was filed on her behalf yesterday in a federal court in Oregon by the privacy nonprofit organization Electronic Frontier Foundation. It alleged that the surveillance operation run by 3 ex-contractors and Dark Matter, a United Arab Emirates cybersecurity company, led to Al-Hatul's arrest by the UAE Security Services. From there, she was extradited by private plane to Saudi Arabia, where she was detained, imprisoned, and tortured, according to the lawsuit. A 2019 Reuters investigation cited by the lawsuit revealed that Al-Hatul was targeted in 2017 by a team of U.S. mercenaries who surveilled dissidents on behalf of the UAE under a program called Project Raven, which categorized her as a national security threat and hacked her iPhone. Al-Hatul said she was tortured. Interrogators mentioned communications they apparently learned of through unlawful access to her phone. Saudi officials have denied torturing Al-Hatul and say she received a fair trial. In a separate settlement with U.S. federal prosecutors in September for hacking charges, the 3 former U.S. intelligence contractors, Mark Bayer, Ryan Adams, and Daniel Garrick, admitted to conducting surveillance operations on behalf of the UAE, including breaking into mobile devices. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. And you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. All weekend, too. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin l'âge tombe, nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tombe, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.